Hello and welcome to Link Ahead, the City of Dublin podcast. And even though a podcast is something we listen to, today we are talking about things that you can feast your eyes on. We're talking about public art.
First, how about artistic quotes to get us inspired?
I like it when you bust out some quotes, Bruce.
Thank you, yes. Edgar Degas says, "It isn't until the painter has no idea what he's doing that he makes good painting."
Wow, is that how you feel when you wake up in the morning?
I do. I look for inspirational quotes to begin with.
Oh, me too. So Da Vinci said, "Art is never finished, only abandoned."
Ooh, that's deep. And finally, how about this quote? "I think the very best part of creativity is collaborating with friends and colleagues," from the one and only Kermit the Frog.
Oh, I thought that was Kermit there.
And with that, let's bring in our guest. That was a terrible segue, and I apologize for that if you're offended by that. But let's bring in our guest, Dublin's public art manager, Dr. Ava Morgan. Welcome to Link Ahead.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Ava, do you have a favorite quote about art?
I do. I always come back to this one from James Baldwin, who's one of my favorite writers. He said, "The purpose of art is to lay bare the questions that have been concealed by the answers."
I'm going to be thinking about that.
I'm going to have to listen to this episode again just to
I'm going to write that down.
That.
Well, we try to be really timely with all of our episodes, and this one certainly fits the bill for the August calendar because on August 24th, the city and the Dublin Arts Council will officially dedicate the Boat in the Field at ML Red Tribune Nature Reserve along Post Road. Tell us about this piece of art.
Yes, we are really excited for this. It's been about 2 years in the making. The Boat in the Field was created by a world-renowned sculptor. His name is Ilan Averbuk. He was born in Israel, and he currently lives and works in Long Island City, New York. So the piece itself, it's called The Boat in the Field, and it is a 25 by 18-foot sculpture. It's made of Corten steel and recycled granite. What's really cool about this piece is there's two kind of intertwined forms. So there is a boat, and then there is also a tower or a shelter that is kind of housed in the boat. And then there's this series of columns beneath the boat that make it appear like it's either floating in midair or perhaps it's walking through the field. It's very whimsical, but it's also just massive. It looks like it weighs a lot. So there's a lot of kind of defying gravity. So the artist is really hoping that the artwork inspires questions from the viewers. So what is this boat in the field? How did it arrive here? Is it floating or is it walking out of the water? Where might it be going? So we're really excited to share it with the community and to celebrate it and dedicate it on the 24th.
Yeah, it is impressive. And what's been neat about it is people in the neighborhood walking through ML Red Tribune have been able to see it kind of come to life over the last few weeks, and people are already talking about it. So it's going to be a really exciting thing. Can you talk a little bit about why he chose the boat theme for this piece?
Sure. So with any great piece of public art, the process begins by inviting the artist to the site to just get inspiration. So Ilan walked the nature reserve with us and a team from the city and the selection committee for the commission. And, just let himself wander, took lots of photos, asked questions. But I think he was just struck by the pond there. Mm-hmm. And I think that it kind of just lent itself to his fascination with the boat as an image. He said he's had this sort of interest in the boat as a symbol since he was a little kid. And he started whittling away at pine to create tiny little boat sculptures. So he's been creating boats since he was little. And I think this site in particular just really resonated with him.
And I'm always amazed at the details that artists think about. When you said recycled granite, not recycled, repurposed granite?
Recycled, yeah.
Like, what is recycled granite?
Yeah, so, it could come from many different places. I'm not sure how he located this, but the stone that you see in the Boat in the Field sculpture is recycled from the steps of St. John Cathedral in Cleveland. Huh. So it's really inspiring to think about, how many people walked up these stairs, for a wedding, a ceremony, different rites of passage while it was part of this church. And It's just part of Elon's practice as an artist to think about the material he's using and, when possible, to recycle what has already been used in a different setting. And if he can do it locally, that's even better. So we're happy it's Ohio stone.
Yeah, that's very cool. There's another piece of public art we want to talk about too in the neighborhood near Valentina's in Bridge Park. It's a 3,444 piece puzzle of hand-cut ceramic tile. Tell us about this incredible work.
It is incredible. I'll say that to begin with. It is just a very unique, gorgeous mosaic. The fact that it's hand-cut and hand-painted make it just an outstanding work of art. This was created by Eric Rausch and his partner Jen Kiko. They are local artists to Columbus. We are so fortunate to have them be a part of the public art in Dublin. I think that the title for this piece really speaks to the vision of the artwork. So it's called In the Neighborhood. Again, when the artists visited the site, they took inspiration from Bridge Park. You know, it's this great bustling community and development, but they were also really interested in what was across the street, Riverside Crossing Park, and of course, the nearby river. So I think they were really trying to kind of meld the natural with the new, the developed, and they thought, okay, what can we do to make this feel comfortable and familiar? So In the Neighborhood was a way to kind of pay homage and tribute to natural flora and fauna of the area. So what are the animals, what are the plants that we're familiar with, and how can we kind of celebrate them in this beautiful, colorful mosaic? And I think they did just that.
It really is beautiful. Yeah. And I was just thinking a 3,444 piece puzzle is something my late grandmother would have loved. She would have spent a lot of time putting that together. So that had to be fun, but also a daunting task just to assemble.
It was an incredible feat. I don't know how many hours they spent on this project, but the two of them as a duo, they also got a lot of help from their studio assistants at the Kiln Room, which is their operation on South High Street. It's a phenomenal place. You should definitely check out their programming. Shout out to Eric for making that happen. But yeah, it was a labor of love. And I mean, from start to finish, they were just the most professional artists to work with. A real treat.
That's great, and it really complements Valentina's there. So maybe go for the art, stay for the food, or go for the food, stay for the art. I'm not sure. So, Ava, you have mentioned a little bit about this, but help us understand the process for getting public art proposed, discussed, and eventually displayed in Dublin, because there's a kind of a robust program for that.
There is. It is a whole ecosystem. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of people. A lot of attention to detail. So the whole process takes about 2 years when you're looking at a large-scale permanent public art commission. And ours in Dublin is funded by the hotel motel tax. So that, you know, every about 2 years is when we're going to get a new commission rolling. And the process really begins by looking at the community. So we're trying to determine what sites might be ripe for public art. So that is a process that is tag teamed by Dublin Arts Council and City of Dublin Parks and Recreation staff. So we come up with a short list of potential sites, and then we have a criteria that we use to evaluate the sites. So like the artists, we go to the sites themselves and explore and consider things like accessibility and educational opportunities, the history, the culture of the site. And then we narrow it down to 3. We invite the community to also consider those sites with us. So community feedback is really integral to the public art process from start to finish. So once we have that community impact or feedback, we then take that to City Council and we make a recommendation, and then Council approves the site. From then, we are able to put together a national call, and that goes out to public artists across the country. The best see it. We usually, for the last commission, we had 150 applications. So what we do then is put together a selection committee, and those lucky people get to review all of those applications, score them, and then we come down to a final 3. And those are the artists that we invite to Dublin to do a site visit. They're here all day. All 3 will come together so that they get the same experience. They ask a ton of questions about Dublin. They're the best investigators. Artists are just They're researchers. They really get into the details. So that's always a great day. Then they go away for a bit and get creative. So they put together a concept and a proposal for what their artwork could look like. So they're not doing that until, halfway into the process, really, is when the artwork comes together, once they have a real sense of what they're working with. Then the presentations are made to the selection committee and to the community at large. So again, that's another opportunity for the community to get involved and provide their feedback. So which concepts do they think are going to work best for Dublin?
That has to be a hard thing as an artist, to sit there, come to someone else's community and say, here's what I've come up with. Now tell me whether you like it or not.
Yeah. I mean, artists are brave.
Yeah.
They are.
They have a very hard career. It is a hard path to be an artist, but I think in working with artists, what I notice is that they don't really have a choice. Like, this is what they were made to do.
Sure.
And that gives them the kind of integrity or courage to just do it. And I think they get pretty accustomed to hearing people's opinions and knowing that not everybody will like their concept. But also what we see is that opinions change, and that's a good thing too.
Well, that's like just hearing what the artists, like the recycled materials and things like that, hearing the story, and instead of just looking at an image and judging, it's that path of discovery that I think is super cool, that you got that process that you guys go through.
Yeah, there's a lot of intention behind every artwork you see in Dublin. There's so many choices made by the artist, and I think part of our task and my task as a public art manager is to help tell that story so that you can sort of bridge the gap between, the artist and what you see in your backyard. I think there's a lot more education there and a lot more to be engaged with. So I feel lucky to work in a community where people are passionate and want to get involved.
That's Dublin right there.
So tell us a little bit about how you get into this. How did you become interested in the arts?
I think it started at a very young age. I started dance pretty much after I learned how to walk and continued that in various forms throughout, my adulthood. I continued to dance 5 days out of the week. I think it just becomes a second language when you're in the arts. And for people that are into them, it's sort of your first language. It's where you're comfortable. It's where you find meaning. It's how you make connections. So once you're embedded in that, it's just hard to let go of. So I didn't know that arts management, arts administration, I didn't know that existed until I was in grad school and found it. And I just thought, hey, if I can continue to make arts part of everyday life and support artists in doing the work that they do, I can't think of anything more noble than that.
Can you talk a little bit more about how many public art pieces we have in Dublin, what the philosophy is, and what makes our public art program distinct?
So the Dublin Art and Public Places program started in 1988. And we like to say that it's grown to more than 70 large and small-scale permanent, temporary, and interactive public art projects today. So our goal really is to enhance the quality of life for Dublin's residents and also to strengthen the city as a destination for visitors. And I think public art is unique because it really does speak to both those who live here and those that come to visit.
Sure.
And a lot of times I think we think about public art as that large sculpture in an open field. That's sort of what comes to mind. But I think what's great about our collection is that it's really expanded to include those smaller or temporary performance-based public artworks. So a great example of this is we hosted a bread festival in Kaufman Park a few years back, and as part of that, we hosted a group of Tibetan monks, and they created a sand mandala for a week in the park, and you could come and you could observe them making this. And then, this was a temporary work of public art, because at the end, it was dismantled, and that was part of the community's ceremony for that piece. Another good example is our river box collection, which many of you are probably familiar with. Mm-hmm. That is public art at its best. We now have 18 river boxes across the community, and those are small artist-created vessels. So these are types of public art that continue to make Dublin really unique and memorable for visitors. It's expanding that vision of the sculpture in a field to more kind of participatory, smaller scale projects that are still public art.
Public art has evolved because, you think about the field of corn. That's like the first thing that comes to mind. And then all of a sudden you evolve and you bring in this interactive piece like the river boxes. I mean, it's just great.
Yeah. I think, people have a perception of public art, but I think there's so much in just what we call it. It's for the public. So the more that people can get their hands on it and feel like they're a part of it, I think that's the most successful project that you can ask for. So again, it's about making those opportunities for community feedback. But then if you can also have public art projects where people are actually doing something with the art, they're interacting with it, they're watching it be created, I think that's what sets Dublin apart.
You talk about the public. What do you hear from residents? Are they telling us they want more public art, and maybe what more do they want?
Yes, I get phone calls almost every day from people in Dublin that have ideas for the next public art piece, which I think is fantastic.
That's great,
yeah. It's not a problem. So
Bruce, stop calling her. There's a process.
No, but I think people get inspired when they travel to different cities and they're seeing something. Maybe there's a particular artist. I mean, I've taken down a lot of detail about certain visions people have. And maybe I've also gotten ideas about, a specific site in Dublin that's just begging for public art. So yeah, the community is definitely engaged.
It's true. When you go to other cities, sometimes you'll see some overt public art where it's kind of everywhere. And I liked what you said about Dublin, how there's great and small, just various scales of the art. And so you'll have a leather lips, the field of corn, things like that. And then you'll have other things that you might stumble upon when you're closer to a tree. You see an exuvia. And the river boxes are a little bit different too. So just being able to discover that is what I think makes Dublin really neat.
I'm a huge baseball fan, so I love Going, Gone.
Yeah.
Just because of the tracking of the ball. Because, when the right-handed batter hits it, it goes one way, left-handed batter hits it goes the other way, so it's just spot on.
That one's really dynamic too because you have the sort of recreational field component and then hidden in those woods. So if you walk into those woods, it's a more of a contemplative journey, but it's still part of the process for that artist.
Well, let's switch it up and go to the performing arts a little bit. So this year marks 40 years of our concert series known as Sundays at Scioto. 40 years, I didn't realize that. And you have quite a lineup this year, starting with the Reaganomics on August 27th. One of the best local cover bands in Central Ohio, always a crowd pleaser. I would say guaranteed to sell out. So get there early, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us more.
Well, they're definitely going to be an exciting group. If you're into the 80s dance scene,
you are.
this is your night. So they include a lot of classic rock hits from Journey, REM, The Cure, and Prince. So if that sounds like your jam, you do not want to miss that night.
And how many people have to Google Reaganomics to understand what that title means?
That's a great question.
Right. I'm from the 80s, so
Probably
I understand.
our interns.
Yeah, exactly. September 10th, it's Pop Gun doing pop rock from the 60s through the 80s.
Yes, this group is very talented. They're often covering classics that other bands just find too difficult to attempt. So they are experts in performing, Queen, Paul Simon, Led Zeppelin, Beatles, Stevie Wonder. So definitely a great professional group, really high caliber, something special.
All right, and then we're going country on September 24th with North to Nashville. I've been hearing a lot about them over the last couple of years. Another local favorite.
They are. So they have 4 performers from the Columbus area. And I did just find out that the lead vocalist is a former OSU football player too. So if you're not into music, but you're into sports, this might be your night.
That's amazing.
And you wrap it up with the British Invasion. And this isn't just a Beatles tribute. They do songs from the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, all kinds of British music.
Yes, this band is so much fun. I was there the last time they performed, and I found myself singing to nearly every song. So yeah, they're a favorite of mine. You don't want to miss it if you love the 60s.
Oh, and did we mention this is free? These are free
This
concerts.
is a free gift to the community.
Great.
Yes, I think, that is such a special gift. And we're so happy to provide it. We're happy we get to provide it with our sponsors every year. And yeah, 40 years, I mean, it's a big deal. I will say you do want to get there early. And if you're worried about the weather, this comes up every year, but you can always check out our website, dublinarts.org. You can give us a call if you're concerned.
Okay, Ava. Well, we have a tradition to close out each episode with rapid fire questions with our guests. Are you ready to jump in?
I think I am.
All right. Well, what's the most common question people ask you about your job?
I think the question, how, is probably most common. So how does public art happen? How did the artist create this piece? How do we get more public art? How?
Yeah.
What would you say is our most popular public art piece?
Field of Corn remains the most popular piece to date, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. On the flip side, which one do you think people maybe just don't quite understand?
Ironically, I think it may be Field of Corn as well.
You might say that.
Because it's definitely a roadside attraction for many, but there's that other layer, the kind of memorial piece that maybe people overlook. So there's more to see. If you've been there 10 times, maybe you haven't been there enough.
I would have to say it's definitely the most Instagrammable piece of
absolutely.
art. And especially during Ohio State football season, you get a lot of OHIOs out at the Field of Corn. So
If you could bring any kind of public art to Dublin, what would it be and where would you put it?
I think we are ripe for some dance performance of public arts. So some kind of pop-up spectacle dance performance on the bridge, maybe.
Oh,
Well,
I like that.
you have thought this through.
Are flash mobs still a thing? No.
I love flash mobs.
Can we
think
bring
they
them
could
back?
come back,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're retro now. So, all right, if you could paint, sculpt, maybe dance, right, make music, right, but beside any artist in the world, living or not, who would it be and why?
It would be Martha Graham for me, and she was one of the pioneers of modern dance.
What form of art is the most underrated?
Good fiction.
Okay.
Be honest. Are you an easy person to visit an art museum with in that you can look at one painting for an hour?
Actually, as an administrator, I spend just as much time looking at how a gallery is set up and the signage and watching people admiring art as I do looking at the artwork itself. So you might find that annoying and the commentary there a little too nerdy, but
Look at the signage. It's really good.
Best city in the world for art that you visited?
probably New York City still.
Okay, best city in the world for art that you still want to visit.
It's not a city, but I would like to go to Iceland because
Oh.
I hear that music and writing, literature is really, there's a rich scene there for both.
Dr. Ava Morgan, thank you so much for joining us today, as we know August is a very busy time for you.
Thanks for having me.
Listeners, you can find all the information about the upcoming Boat in the Field dedication and Sundays at Scioto at dublinarts.org.
And as always, we thank you for taking the time to connect with your city. Tune in next time as we continue to explore the many personalities and experiences that make Dublin a thriving place to live, work, and grow.